So replace your property. Do it when you want for lifestyle. Do not use finances or the economy as an excuse because it comes out in the wash. Hope that helps. That's got to be your go-to when people lack urgency and want to wait to list their home for sale. Home sellers. How to create urgency for home sellers. Surprisingly or not surprisingly, I mean, a lot of the same scripts, talking points, data, and facts that we might use to motivate home buyers from a financial and economic perspective can also be used for home sellers. And why? It's because they have a home to replace themselves with. Typically a home seller is not going to sell and then rent. Very, very rare to get people to move twice, right? They got to sell, rent, and then sell and buy. And trying to time that has always been a bad move. There's only been a couple times in history where that's been workable, where home prices went down long enough to give someone time to do that. And that was the Great Depression and the Great Recession. They're about 100 years apart, typically. And even then, that's a big arrest. That's even going to happen. Anybody that could be arrogant enough to say that they can predict that sustained of an economic environment would be the richest man in the world, the richest woman in the world. Could be out of control. Just like anybody that can predict interest rates. You can do what comes out of the Federal Reserve chairman's mouth, sure. But past that, anybody that can predict that is, quite frankly, being ignorantly arrogant, because if you could predict that and you believe in it, put your money where your mouth is. There's a lot of places you can invest on that one. That's for sure. A lot of places. If you don't know how to do that, look it up. It's real simple. If they think that they know for sure what's going to happen with interest rates, the discount rate, federal funds rate, mortgage rates, all over the place, can you invest publicly on that? I remember my dad was in the business about 50 years. He's a well-educated man. And he used to always tell me, Brian, if you could predict interest rates, and this is back when I was selling real estate, 80s and 90s, when interest rates were all over the place, right? Average interest rate in the 80s and 90s was probably about 11, 12%, fixed 30-year. Home prices sold like mad. Homes sold all over the place. Prices went up. Everybody lived. They marched on, and they will in the future. I know the adjustment period's tough, but they will. And he always said, if you could do that, you'd be the richest man in the world. And I agree. No one seems to be able to do that. I've tried millions of times to be that Nostradamus that could predict interest rates, and I've just failed miserably. I think from the years 2001 to 2022, they've said interest rates are going to go up. And quite frankly, they never did. For 20 years, rates are going to go up. Buy now. Rates are going to go up. Buy now. And then people stopped saying it because it was just crazy. It was like, wow, rates are never going to go up. Well, we finally got inflation, so rates go up. Now you don't know. When is inflation going to stop? Very easy to, the early 80s, they couldn't stop inflation. So rates just kept going up, which is what scares everyone. The Federal Reserve chairman coming out and saying, I'm going to do what it takes. I don't care if it goes into a recession. Hope not. Don't think it will. But if that's what I got to do to stop inflation, that's my one job, stop inflation. It's more important that people can afford to live, and it's more important to protect the integrity of the dollar. That's his basis, not mine. I'm just repeating. And if that puts the country in a recession, so be it. So a seller that's waiting to see what happens on the market is risking interest rates increasing at a level. Home prices are one thing, guys, but interest rates are much more. You'll see this with home sellers, right? They'll say, hey, I want to sell my house for $500,000. Or no, I want to sell it for $550,000. You're like, you probably only can sell it for $500,000. This isn't 2021. You could probably only sell it for $500,000. If you can't tell, I like round numbers. And they're like, well, I'm going to wait until I can get 550 because I need that $50,000. Of course they need it. I don't know what they need it for. They need it for a down payment on their next house. They need it to new car. I don't know. They've like most people, when you tell them a price or they get a price in their mind, the first thing they do is do the math, right? Well, I got to pay the agent. I got to pay off the loan, and I'm going to have this much money. Then when they have this much money in their mind, the next thing they do is they spend it in their mind, right? I'll put this much down on the next home, and I'll buy this for myself, or I'll invest this or whatever. And then when you take that money away by telling them the price is 500, not 550, that's that instant pain. Oh, I'm not going to do anything then. No, I'm just looking at Nordstrom's. I don't need anything here. Leave me alone. No, I'm just looking, even though I'm fully intent. Just not this second, in a few minutes. They're saying not this second, next year, after graduation, whatever. So they will push you away. But what they don't get is that $50,000 in price versus interest rate increases when they want to buy their replacement property. I mean, a 1% interest rate on a $500,000 home, I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of a loan they're going to pay in interest versus that $50,000 right now. Kind of crazy. If they think housing prices can come back, again, you're guessing on that too. You're rolling the dice on prices and interest rates, and we know those don't work together. So very, very crazy. Interest rates are much more important than prices. So anybody waiting, it's just so much more money in them. That's why people spend extra money to buy them down. A lot of money to buy them down, because over the life alone, that could be a lot of money. And that's the idea behind it, right? So that's number one. The number one is the importance of interest rates is huge. And let's talk about that. I'm going to show you something here. Here's a chart showing you the history of interest rates going back to 71, right? Most people have seen something like this. You can see the roaring 80s had of mortgage rates. We were up over, almost 19% in 81. But look at this increase where they just kept increasing rates from 77 all the way. Then they went up and they started coming down. They went up again all the way into like 81. So it was like 3 or 4 years of just the Federal Reserve chairman coming out saying, we're going to increase it another 3.25%. Well, this happened before where it just went up for 3 or 4 years straight and the whole country went in recession. They kicked Jimmy Carter out of the office because the economy was so bad because of it. Ronald Reagan came in. Inflation got under control. I don't think anything because of Reagan or anything at that point. At this point, it was, inflation got under control. That's the Federal Reserve chairman's a boring guy that always comes out with bad news, but his job is to calm this. That's the one thing he controlled. And, he did. He got a hold of it. I mean, he took the whole country's economy into a pretty significant recession. Nothing like the Great Recession or anything like that. Home sales were still pumping in the 80s. It was a great year to be in business. But you can see it slowly got under control. And recession, inflation. Now we're into 1986. Rates came back down to 10%. And they slowly came down. And then they kind of settled in. They slowly came down and inflation got under control. And they slowly dropped rates cautiously as inflation came all the way down. And then what really happened, and this is when rates took the really big drop and stayed down. And then we had the Great Recession. The Great Recession, holy moly, that was a scary period. They actually started buying back mortgage-backed securities to get people safe, to influence the 10-year T-bill to bring mortgage rates down again. The Federal Reserve chairman dropped the federal funds rates way down so people would invest to try to bring people out of a deep Great Recession. And rates have stayed down ever since. Then COVID happened. Oh my gosh, same thing. Dropped the funds rates to help the economy out. Now rates are back up. We're really right in this range right here. The idea that they're going to go back down again? Guys, I guess it could happen. It would take something real bad, though, to get people to bring it down. In all likelihood, though, the history gets a lot worse. Likelihood is things are going to get a lot worse rather than get better. If you're trying to play for the A+, odds are the average student gets a C, which is going to be right in here. That's the bell curve. So if people are waiting to buy or replace their property, and sellers are crazy. They'll say a lot of weird stuff, man. I'll wait until the interest rate comes back down. Then I can sell for a higher price because buyers will have a lower rate. More buyers will be able to afford me. Okay, you wait. You guys saw the chart, I don't know if that's the right bet, but I really don't think it is. And our job, most of the experts are saying the same. So I'm going to push back and I'm going to apply some pressure to create some urgency for my seller to move now. I'm going to have the hard conversation. My job is to look out for their financial and economic interests. So it's easier to say, I'm just going to wait. It's easier. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to fix your house up. Don't have to clean things up. Don't have to let a bunch of agents come through there. Don't have to deal with anything. If you just tell yourself, I can just kind of keep on going. Just like I don't have to join the gym. I don't have to eat healthy. Don't have to start going to church again. All those things we know are better for us, we decide not to do just to stay in the rut. The rut's easy. It's comfortable. Taking action in any of those things, including listing your house for sale, is uncomfortable short term. Long term, we know it's beneficial to them. But like anything, you have to walk across some hot coals to get where you want to go. Some uncomfortable activities got to be up front, and we've got to be able to be comfortable with having the tough conversation to walk them through it. We as agents have to be professionals. We have to be the doctor that tells the client to stop smoking, even though you like it, even though it's comfortable. And it's going to be very uncomfortable to quit. We need you to because your lungs are deteriorating. Got to be a professional. And to be a professional, you have to have those conversations. Okay? Now, the other thing, I want to reveal to you probably the most important script and talking point that there is in the history of real estate. And with sellers right now, they're falling right into the trap. I'm going to wait to get that price, right? I don't want to sell for 500. I'm going to wait till prices come back at 550. And we talked about how we can use mortgage rates. We can actually use, and how mortgage rates are more important than prices. But a lot of people just, when they're not business people by trade. And if they are, they haven't been trained in it. So they always want to buy low and sell high, even if everything else costs them a gazillion dollars, right? Even if you're throwing money away in rent year over year over year, you're going to wait for that home prices to come down. Even if they go up 20% and come down, just so you can say you bought low. Sellers too, they want to sell high. They want to be able to say it. They want to be able to brag about it. We're not logical creatures, guys. We're emotional ones. We want to appeal to our emotions, right? We make emotional decisions always. Then we go back and justify them with logic. Please remember that. We make emotional decisions, never logical ones. I don't care who you are. Then you go back and justify what you emotionally want to do based upon logic, whatever appeals to you. And that's the crux of sales. So our job is to slow them down, be this neutral, intelligent, professional third party, and advise them on what's correct with logic. Don't let their emotion drive the bus. Real important we do that. We got to have those tough conversations, not people please and call it good customer service to allow them to do what they think is right. They're not the professional, you are. If you let me see my doctor, I wouldn't even go in. I would just prescribe myself the medication I needed. And boy, that sometimes it might work. Sometimes it might be deathly fatal. So it's real important we become the professional and take control of the process, just like my doctor does. The most important script, the oldest script, it goes back at least 50 years. I know I've been in the industry well more than 30 of them, and my dad was in it for 50 before he passed away. So it goes back his whole professional career. That's for sure. I know that one. And I've had a lot of people in the business for a very long time tell me they heard it when they first started. The script is called It Always Comes Out in the Wash. And it's the most important script because people want to buy low and sell high. Okay? So to do that, it always kind of helps to have a chart, in this chart, average home prices, right? Talked about it. Going back to the 60s, home prices have always gone up. And there have been dips, right? Here's a big one that really works out for this script right now about how prices went up in the Great Reset or the housing boom up to like 2006, and then they crashed for 7, 8, and 9. And then all of a sudden, by 2012-ish, we're already back again. And everybody has their, on average in the United States of America, at least, I guess there's micro markets that differ, but everybody got their money back in just a few years, and their equity in their home was back. And then prices went up again. And that's the biggest move we've seen since the Great Depression, in the United States at least. Now, with that being said, North America kind of the same, Canada's kind of the same. There are little price dips that don't last more than a year. Really important to point those out all over the place, but they don't usually last more than a year. The year over year, home prices typically go up every single year, but some of the times these are seasonal, where home prices go down every fall, winter, come back up when the luxury homes start coming up on the market, selling it again. Or could be some, Oklahoma City bombings in here, 9/11s in here, things like that cause prices to go down because people pull off the market, except for those people that have to, which tends to pull the luxury homes off. So lower priced homes sell. The way it comes out in the wash is this. Let's say someone's trying to time it, right? Someone's trying to time it. They're like, I'm going to time it. I don't know how you know this. It's really hard to time it. And they say, I'm going to wait. Well, wait a minute. Before I show you the graph, let me explain it to you this way. This is important because this actually happened to me. And it happened to me in 2007 or 8. I was at a backyard graduation party where we had sit-down tabletops of 8 at a table. And I'm sitting there. And it's in this neighborhood, and basically everybody that was there was from the neighborhood, for the most part. Except for this one guy at the table behind me, whose back was to me. And he was very loud and gregarious. He had moved out of the neighborhood at the top of the market in 2005 or 6 or something. And he had moved out, and he was bragging to everybody else that still lived there like a complete jerk. Man, I sold at the right time. I sold at the top. I got, I don't know, I'll make up numbers, 800,000 for my house. Now, if I tried to sell it passive aggressively, like the rest of you morons who are still here, I'd only get 650,000 for it. So he's saying this, and everybody's like, oh, they're not saying it, but they're like thinking that. And he knows it. That's why people do stupid stuff like that. So I'm sitting there behind him, just grinding my napkin, thinking, you moron, not only are you a jerk, you're wrong. Because it comes out in the wash. Because what'd you do? You went and bought another freaking house somewhere else at the top of the market. So that house you're in is now worth the same amount less. You just didn't realize it. It's there. It's probably going to take you a long time before prices go back up to get you caught up. See, if you're buying and replacing your personal residence, you should never, and I mean never, time the market. It feels like you should because you get this big paycheck when you sell your house. Then that's when you get to realize it. You don't get to realize it when you put it into a new house. But at the end of the day, it all comes out in the wash. There's no difference. So people that are trying to time the market with their personal residence, we need to show them that. We need to explain that to them. And I like to draw it because I think people are more visible. You don't need to have this chart handy. You can just draw when prices go up and down. You can draw from 2004 up down to, to 2006, and then down to 2008, then up to 2012 or whatever if you want, and say, hey, If you buy at the top of 2006 and you're worried the prices are going to drop, just understand if they drop, you buy a new house down here for cheap. If you're worried about selling up here, you're going to, because you get the highest, well, understand you're paying or you're selling, and then houses drop because you replace, same deal. If you buy high, you're going to sell high. If you buy low, you're going to sell low. It all comes out in the wash. So either you're going to be that buyer when the market's low, getting a great deal, but you're selling when it's low, or you get to be the seller who sells high, but you're buying when it's high and it's going to go down on you. There's, you get to wear both hats either way. You see it all the time. A seller who's trying to sell their house in a low market, or a scary market. They're doing everything they can, giving up concessions, paying for closing costs, doing everything they can. The minute they turn into a buyer, they grow fangs. I want them to give me this and that, and then they get all aggressive on the buy side. That's because it comes out in the wash. You'll see it on the buy side too. You'll see it both ways. When they're buying a property in a hot market, they're willing to do anything. They'll give them their firstborn. They'll pay everything. They'll pay the seller's closing costs. They'll come up above asking. They'll do whatever. But the minute they want to sell, it's you better do everything for me now. You better give me your firstborn. It's because it comes out in the wash. So we got to explain that to them because we want people to buy and sell their personal residence when they want to, because they should. You buy and sell when you want to, because economically with your personal residence, the idea of buying low and selling high is just not going to work. The only exception is that someone thinks that they're going to be able to sell, rent, let prices go down, and then buy. And boy, that is a huge risk. It's a risk on interest rates. It's a risk on timing the market that no one's been able to successfully predict. And even then, you're still throwing away on rent for a while. I just think it's nickels and dimes at that point. Silly, silly, silly. So replace your property. Do it when you want for lifestyle. Do not use finances or the economy as an excuse because it comes out in the wash. Hope that helps. That's got to be your go-to when people lack urgency and want to wait to list their home for sale.